Hi everyone, Reg again here from Crown Realty International. Thanks for tuning in. Just going to talk a little bit about the Brisbane property market today. So I want you to cast your mind back to the start of 2020 and remember when COVID was just happening. We were all terrified, hiding in our houses. It was all doom and gloom. Everyone was predicting a big drop in the property market, especially a lot of the banks and the economists were saying property prices could drop 15-20%. And so what we saw was a really slow period straight after March, April, that sort of time frame. We saw very few properties going to market and we saw a very slow market. However, it became apparent pretty quickly that the doom and gloom was, well, ill-advised, because property prices started to go up fairly consistently toward the end of the year. More and more people started to become quite bullish on the property market. The banks, starting with Westpac, I think Westpac was the first one to come out with a really positive outlook, saying that property prices over 2021, 2022 would go up by about 20%. And then we saw a lot of the other banks follow with really positive predictions. So yeah, the property market looking pretty grim towards the start of 2020 was starting to look really good by the end of 2020. And one of the really big driving factors for that growth was essentially migration. We had a lot of expats returning, but we also saw really strong interstate migration to Queensland. So you can see that there in this graph, you can see the interstate migration. Obviously, that growth has been fairly consistent for the last few years, as you can see from the graph, but during the COVID period, we saw quite a spike, so even more interstate migration than usual, and we just didn't see that growth. In fact, Victoria sort of slid into negative territory for the first time ever, or in a very long time. So all of that extra migration, all of those new people moving up to the state, they're all, needing a place to live. A lot of them were shopping with a lot more money than the local Queenslanders because they were coming from a much more affluent property market. Property is still really quite affordable in Brisbane compared to Sydney and Melbourne. So you see a lot of these people moving up, buying into the property market, pushing the prices up. We saw auction clearance rates rise above the 70% almost consistently throughout the end of last year and the start of this year. That's unheard of in Queensland, or very, very unlikely. Auction clearance rates in Queensland tend to be quite low. Queenslanders aren't auction participants, generally speaking, and I think that's a reflection of two things. I think it's a reflection of more people moving from down south, but also we're seeing buyers get a little bit more desperate and throw their hat in the ring for auction as well, which they're not used to just because they're trying to secure properties. So we really are seeing ourselves in a seller's market at the moment, and I think that's going to continue. We're seeing real growth in Brisbane, especially in detached housing. That was one of the first parts of the market to really grow. And that's no surprise in a COVID period where people are locked down, people think they're going to be confined to their homes, they want a bigger home. That makes sense. But since then, we've seen growth in other parts of the market as well. It's sort of branching out. 85% of the suburbs in Brisbane saw growth. Really the only parts, or the main parts, we didn't see the growth, inner city apartments. But outside of that, in suburbs adjacent to the CBD, we actually saw really strong growth even with apartments and townhousing. So people are looking more at those lifestyle options. They're looking at homes that they're happy to live in. And I think that's how COVID sort of changed the mind of a lot of people. Looking forward, if you are looking to invest in Brisbane, I would say definitely look at detached housing. But location is also key. So if you would prefer to invest in, say, townhouses or apartments, you're seeing really, really strong rental returns in some of those areas, especially adjacent to the CBD and those sort of inner ring suburbs. So yeah, very buoyant about those areas, very bullish that the property price is going to go well there. So definitely seller's market at the moment, but there's still some really good bargains to buy, and I think we're only just seeing the growth start. So definitely still a really good opportunity for investors to get into the Brisbane market right now.